Hi and welcome to the latest episode of Pat's Procrastination, brought to you by the Pat's Propaganda YouTube channel. Please do not forget to be subscribing to said YouTube channel so you do not miss an episode of the fun that is Pat's Procrastination. I welcome you into episode 30. I know we've been off for about a month, but there's not that much been going on in Patriots land, but we thought we'd bring you a bit of a catch up, a bit of a high so that you know that we still exist. So I welcome in the one you have all been missing. It is my co-host Chudders. Chudders, how are things with you?
Not too bad, thank you, Claire. It's good to be back. Good to be back talking Pats, and not long now to the start of the season, or at least some meaningful football.
Yes, but don't wish away the summer. It's very key.
What summer? we right. Obviously, we live in Blighty. What summer? If I look out the window, it's pouring with rain, and we're now in mid-July.
See, I don't mind that, but that's another topic for another conversation for another day, really. But still, yes, don't wish our summer away. We have plenty. The Friday, as we record this on Tuesday, folks, Tuesday, 16th of July, Friday sees a rookie training camp begin. And then veteran training camp, I believe, is next Tuesday. So we are on the cusp of things about to happen. So we thought we'd bring you this show where not really a lot has happened, but there's a few things that we can talk about. I have a list, as usual, so we'll bring it in. Firstly, I want to touch upon the Patriots are #1 in the league for cap space currently, as we record this, with approximately something in the lines of 44 million. Apologies, Miguel, I haven't checked recently. My bad. Where do you think they should be spending this? Obviously, what is available to spend, because we know that they need working capital. But what are you looking at, Chudders, as we sit here, that they should be throwing the dollars at?
So there's a couple of options. You could obviously look to extend some more players, and they've done quite a bit of that this off-season already, to be fair. I can't remember if Stevenson had extended by the time we last recorded. But they've made a few extensions. They could do with a few more players if they so desired. And Judon is obviously one that is screaming out for a pay rise at the moment.
But where would you spend the money? That's what I'm asking.
I was giving a summation of the situation.
I apologise. We're knocking the rust off here, folks.
I don't know. We could argue always, even if we agreed on something. Don't worry. So Judon is the obvious extension. If you think the value's there for extending him, for giving him a bit more money, for making him happy, because at the moment the word is he's not. He knows there's a lot of cap space there. He's seen a lot of people around him get paid. He thinks he's due a bit more, and I think that could be someone who maybe gets a bit more than they're currently on, but maybe not quite as much as he would ideally like. Let's put it that way. So it could just be a pay rise for this year, not necessarily a longer extension. Because really, do they think he's going to be part of a next championship winning team? What do they think his window of effectiveness is? Is it only maybe 1-2 years really before they want to be replacing him? So he's probably the obvious answer for internal spending at the moment. I don't think there's many others really that are screaming out that are worthy of an extension at this stage, or a bump, because they've taken care of those guys, Barmore, etc. already.
Got opinion on him?
I do like Peppers. I loved Peppers when they got him, and I think he's been brilliant. He's been not only on the field, he's been a core off-field leader as well, I think. I would be happy if they did extend him again. I guess it's getting that value right on what that deal is going to be. But externally, I'd love it if they spent that money on a left tackle. Now, with that, you're either going to have to trade for one or wait until one gets cut. When cuts happen in 6 weeks or whatever it is now, 2 months. No, 6 weeks, I think. If one's cut that needs paying, because if it's just a camp body guy, then he's not going to have a high wage demand anyway. Realistically, any good veteran left tackles that are going to need significant dent into that money you've got are not really going to be available unless you're trading for them, because they're not really likely to be cut, to be honest. And then again, it's also, excuse me, balancing out who is it you're getting and what's that deal looking like? So, for example, if a team cut a 34-year-old left tackle because they really think, oh no, we need to develop this younger guy coming through, the Patriots, that's not the guy you want to be spending, I don't know, a 3-year, 4-year contract on to bring him into the Patriots, although he may be a very good left tackle. That's not who you want to be splashing money on because he's not going to be part of the future. Whereas if there was a younger, talented tackle who you trade for because maybe he's a third choice tackle on a team, go for it. If you've got a point, you've got a question, the finger's been raised.
Yeah, I've got a question, sir. What about a seasoned veteran that you pay money but not time, as in 3-4 years, because you only want to get through this year because you'll draft him next year? There's that as well. You're going to have to pay a high price necessarily, but if you don't have to sacrifice time, you're just sacrificing money this year. That sort of ticks some boxes. Not a perfect scenario. They're not going to get a perfect scenario because there isn't going to be that left tackle who's wonderful available, because we're at July. Everybody's drafted, everybody's paid, that kind of thing. So do you look at, okay, he's older, but he's decent, but they've got a young guy that they want to develop, like you said. Well, if we throw a bit of money at him, we might get one good year out of him, and then we can look at drafting our own young talent to bring in for the future. So I wouldn't be against that. I wouldn't be against overpaying for short-term
solution. I agree. And I agree with that. It's just a question of who's that person going to be?
Yeah.
Because the free agent left tackles that are out there, there's not really a lot that you want to be bringing in. Like you said, the decent ones already went in free agency. And I've banged that drum long enough that I don't need to keep doing that now. They didn't sign one then. And so you're either going to have to trade for a decent one, and then you're giving up other capital. Like you say, you're not giving up necessarily years, depending on what contract you're trading for, but you're giving up a 5th-round pick, 4th-round pick, 7th-round pick. I don't, depending on the quality of the team, the situation that you're trading at for there.
Could be giving up a Judon. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That's not where I'm going.
You're right.
Is he the only? Say only. That sounds really harsh. But is he the most valuable piece that you've got that's movable?
Piece? Yeah, he's probably the most marketable piece you've got. If there's a team out there who have maybe got 3 good tackles and they think, one of them we can trade if we need to. One of them could be auxiliary, but they've got a gap at edge rusher that they need filling. Then that could be a good trade that's made there. Again, contract situations come into that. There's not a lot you've got on Judon's side to sort of make that a valuable contract that they're picking up. So there could be some picks involved in that one way or the other as well. But
sure,
I agree that could be a good movable piece. I think that's potentially where it is. There's also the option that the cap space can be moved on to next season. Part of that. And so is that what they're thinking? Are they thinking already, like you touched on, possibly they're thinking, okay, well, we know there's a chance we are going to be picking, and I'll be friendly here, in the top 10, something even higher than that. I know you haven't, but let's just say they think, okay, we're going to be picking the top 10. We don't know exactly who, but we think that left tackle is where we're going to target with that pick. But we want to have a good bounty of money because we'd like to go and spend it on some quality receiver, let's say, or another cornerback, or that's where we're going to target an edge rusher next summer in free agency, for example. So they could be thinking along those lines of, no, well, we're not going to spend that money now just because we've got it. They could also be thinking as the season progresses, obviously injuries are going to happen. They might think, well, we'd rather be in a position to address injury concerns with higher rated players that we could potentially pay and bring in through trade or whatever, than have to just stick with next man up mentality. So there's a few options. I've just got a feeling that it's not the cash isn't going to be splashed now. I'd love it the number one position I'd love is left tackle. I'm just not certain they're getting the trade is with Judon, and I don't really want to give up Judon, but the trade with Judon is probably their best opportunity of getting a high enough quality left tackle that you think this money splash, this transaction is going to be worth it. But what are your thoughts?
Well, I was just about to say, what about if they offloaded Juju Smith-Schuster, but they would have to pay his contract? Because there's no way a team is taking him and his contract. So I'm wondering if they could utilise him in some
essentially
crafty little trade.
But I think that's
hey, they got rid
the
of
current
Johnny
cap space. That's giving that essentially only cost you $2 million. I think it's like 10 million to keep him on the roster and 12 million to cut him, something like that. So it's costing you 2 million to do that, which you may think is worthwhile because you want that extra roster space. You don't really see him as part of your future. Yeah, you can spend 2 million of that 44 million cap space you've got on cutting him. That's not a major dent. I think there's quite a chance that could happen. I don't think there's any trade value really for him at the moment with the contract he's got, with the quality he's shown sadly last year.
No, it's doing what they can, like the way that they did the Johnny Smith thing. But they got, I mean, I think we were all surprised when they managed to get rid of Johnny Smith the way that they did. I think even seasoned media people were surprised that they managed to pull that off. So you never know. There might be some crazy GM who doesn't kind of know what he's doing and decides that he wants a big name. You never know. So hopefully he's not our GM.
Someone who's just mad crazy on tight ends. Overvalues them, yeah.
I don't think I overvalue them actually. I know that was a pot shot.
How much would you pay Ryan Izzo to come back?
Anyway, we're not talking about tight ends today. We're talking about wide receivers. Because there's 12 of them currently as Patriots, which seems a little bit excessive. What are your thoughts on this matter?
There's too many. Most of them are there, obviously, camp bodies, and I don't think realistically, even they think, barring some catastrophe injuries or some miracle off season, that even they necessarily have high hopes than that. I think there's a good few pieces in that room that I look forward to seeing how they develop. Polk, obviously, how is he? There's high expectations. There's been such a long history, excuse me, of Patriots not drafting well at the receiver position, or certainly recently anyway, higher in the draft, that we just hope this one's going to hit. They obviously did very well with Douglas last year, but that was a later round pick, and not lucky, but like that was a bit of good fortune maybe that they landed that pick and he developed so well. It wasn't expectation he was going to come in and play as well as he did. I think I look forward to seeing how this shakes up, because I don't have high expectations that Thornton's going to be sticking around, for example.
Do you have high expectations of anything?
No.
No, there you go.
Honest answer. And that was something we're going to get to later.
Oh, no. Quick point that I want to make whilst you've lost your train, because it's my bad, obviously. I didn't realise, because obviously I was listing the wide receivers to have this discussion, so I had the names in front of me, because you all know that my memory is shockingly bad. I was surprised, might just be me, that Kendrick Bourne is actually older than Juju Smith-Schuster. It just felt like he was so younger. That surprised me. Okay, I should really learn to.
That didn't surprise me.
I hope interesting, but I was like, oh my goodness, he's been in the league the same amount of time, and he's the same age, and we're looking at Schuster going, oh, we so want to just lay him off to somebody, but we're hoping that Bourne comes back and really lights a fire. So I just found that interesting. That
most of all, I hope Bourne can come back and stay healthy. If he can stay on the field, show what he showed in patches last year, that's what we're looking forward to. If you've got Bourne playing available, the best ability is availability, available like he was and playing like he was last year. If you've got Douglas available, playing like he was last year. You bring in Polk, you bring in Javon Baker. That's 4 very, very good receivers. Not necessarily elite, but that's 4 very, very good receivers there who hopefully you can find a way to be utilizing those. Beyond that, that's where there's Smith-Schuster, there's Thornton, there's Rieger, there's other players who are on that periphery who have shown some KJ Osborne as well. They brought in, obviously, who you don't necessarily have very high hopes for. I expect Osborne to be probably 5, I guess. It's maybe the 6th receiver if they're keeping one of those that is more up for grabs. What can they do? And that's where I'm intrigued with Rieger, because he showed good skill, obviously, as a return specialist last year. But with the new kickoff rules, I'll be intrigued to see how that affects the value of that position, because our team's going to kick out the end zone more, and you don't need to really even bother too much about having a good receiver, or sorry, a good returner, or are they going to become even more important, because that's now a play that can be exploited more with the right person back there. I suspect it's more the former than the latter, because if kickoffs end up being more exciting, more return happy, then I suspect teams will just kick it through the end zone even more and more, because they won't want to run the risk of giving up big plays. So I don't think Rieger will stay on as a special teams player necessarily, but does he have enough in his locker, enough speed and agility there that he could win that 6th role? Beyond that, the Jackson, the Butte, Cowan Baker, I don't think they're the sort of guys really that are going to be troubling roster spots. There's potential if they clear waivers, they could be on practice team, but I think they've got a lot of names there. But realistically, there's probably only one spot that realistically probably maybe 3 players are actually vowing for.
And the one name you didn't was Tyquan Thornton, and I don't know if he makes the roster, but he was a high round draft pick. So it's like, does it feel like more wastage? Do you have to keep him on just because you drafted him high, sort of thing?
So that's where the short answer is no, because I've got to be honest. If a player is rubbish, I don't care where he was drafted. If he's not showing any value, I don't keep him around just because of that reason. Especially when they're his, because he'll be going into what, his 3rd year now, 4th year.
Yeah.
Like, a first-year player, okay, maybe they don't shine immediately. You give them more time, but by now we've seen that the end product's not really there, and he's not very available either. He's prone to being knocked up or not available, at least. I think that he's got a uphill task to make this roster, to be honest. They've gone out and essentially brought in 3 new receivers who you'd probably put ahead of him, as well as keeping their best 2 receivers from last year. I think is an incredibly uphill task for him to find that roster spot. Not impossible. He's got some good base traits, but realistically, I think this could be his time is up now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, surprisingly, but still.
But the sad thing is, like you say, 2nd round pick, but he's not really got much trade value now either.
No, and that's yeah.
And with you saying about the other thing about trade value, he wasn't Gerard Mayo's pick, so Gerard Mayo doesn't need to necessarily be tied to what was picked before he was head coach and thinking,
no, that's fair.
Need to be giving an extra chance now because it's not his guy.
Yeah, agreed.
How do you see it shaking out? Is there any names, I guess, beyond maybe the big 5, should we say, or the 5 that we, injury side, pretty much think are the locks in the receiver room? Is there any other names that have stood out other than Thornton that you think should be getting that spot?
No, I think I'm disappointed that they're sort of tied in with Smith-Schuster, and if they have to waste a roster spot because they don't want to waste money, that is of a slight concern. You know me, I try not to concern myself too much when it comes to the wide receiver room. But I was surprised when I was listing the name. I mean, you never know. David Wallace could really break out
He could. It's not impossible.
Rookie this year. I think if he's anything as a practice squad, I just had to throw that in just because you named everybody but him, so I thought I'd have to throw that in just to give him his dues. He's on the list, so I need to like name names and everything. But I think the wide receiver thing is something that we are waiting to see when it hits like training camp and preseason, who really works well. The depth is there just for is it just for choice? I don't know, because is there really a choice? Are you really looking at them and saying, oh, they're all contending? Does it feel like they're all contenders? And it doesn't really. It feels like there is some given and then there's just some names. So sometimes it feels like it's just a little bit of waste of time. But I know this is a process and they have to go through it. So
I think part of the reason they have more receivers this year than they've had previous years is they probably want to be assessed that they're looking at it as they almost have two starting quarterbacks this year as well. And they want to be, they want both of those developing at an accelerated rate. One, because you think he's the future of the franchise. One, because you need him to be ready week one, essentially on a new team. And so if you have kind of more those offensive players, you can be doing almost two sets of offense at once if you want, or you're not using tired players because you've only got 7 or 8 receivers, but they're having to work for both quarterbacks. So you can hopefully get more reps in with the quarterbacks and more fresh reps, that more players you have running those routes. That said, it's be interesting to see how they, and this probably segues quite well into how we want Drake May to be developed in the off season, is how do you then split that? Who are you giving the number 1 receivers to, and who are you giving the number 2 receivers to, or 3 or 4 receivers to develop their games? Or are you mixing it up and you've got maybe a group that has Wallace and Thornton, but they're also with Polk and Baker, for example, and then you've got Douglas and Bourne who are paired up with Osborne and Jackson or something? You know, do you have a defined number 1 set of receivers that are continually working together, or have you split them up and you're trying to have 2 good sets of receivers rather than one number 1 and one number 2? It'll be interesting how that develops. I'll throw it to you first then. How do you want to see May developed in the off season now and in the preseason games?
Let me just throw a thought out from the last topic, just before we move on to the Drake May topic. Was the concern for me with doing that is you're diluting the amount of reps that you can give. And with the amount of wide receivers that they've got, it reduces the amount each one has get. So it feels like you're in a catch-22 situation. Shout out to Evan and Alex. But you're in that situation of you want to see what you've got, but you're also not giving the ones that maybe are going to be the starters as much reps, that sort of thing. So yeah, for me it feels like a bit of walking a fine line between that and the dilution situation. But yeah, moving on, as you said, Drake May, topic number 3 for this episode. There's been a lot of talk about thoughts on when to start Drake May, if at all, how far down the season, the reasons behind it. And obviously you can see both sides, can always see both sides of the situation. For me, I can see why people are concerned with starting him too early because of the whole Mac Jones experience. We're worried that we've got our franchise quarterback and they throw him in when he's not quite ready and they break him. Because it's a legitimate fear to have because of what we've experienced for the last few years. However, there's always the argument, I love this, I have millions of arguments myself. There's always the argument of, well, if he is a franchise quarterback, you're not necessarily going to break him. But I still think there is that element of he's young, he's new. You can promote behavior, or you can develop behavior that is going to be against it because of what you're putting him in. I think for me, the long short answer is, for me, I think I want him starting as early as possible. It feels too soon for me to say, yeah, I want him starting week 1, that's it. I do personally want to see where they're going with the O-line. It is a concern. Can they get the team? It does feel like he doesn't need a nice set team that's all perfect and wonderful, and an O-line and a number one wide receiver and everything to put him in, because nobody has that situation, or it's, you know, it's very rare. But there is always that element of the, you know, the Mac Jones experience fear still of putting him in a little bit too soon and breaking down some confidences, or giving him bad habit, or him having to develop bad habits because you're putting him in such a bad situation. I think for me, if you're asking me now on the 16th of July, I think a couple of games and then put him in is sort of generally where I'm feeling now. If come pre-season he looks really raw still and he needs a lot of development, then that needs reevaluating, because you will ruin what may be your future. Just because he's not amazing right now doesn't mean he isn't the franchise, doesn't mean he isn't, you know, the future of the Patriots type thing. It's all fluid for me right now. I think I'm against the just throw him in week one and that's what you need to work with. I think you need a little bit of wait and see, trepidation, give him a chance kind of thing. But also, I'm not really into sitting him for the whole season. Like, oh, just, you don't need to, because you rob him of a season of experience. If nothing more than a losing season, you rob him of all that experience, and then you expect him next year to be the franchise, that kind of thing. So I'm the sort of in the middle. I think he needs to start this year. No, but I think he needs to. My answer is I think he needs to start this year, but I'm just a little bit dubious at starting him immediately because of everything that's changed. I just want a little bit of certainty, a little bit of solidity before I put my shiny new toy that we want to last for a long time in. I think that's not an on the fence. I've given you an answer. What about you?
So to start with, I would be treating him as the starter in pre-season, in training camps, in joint practices, in pre-season games. I would be treating him as the starter, getting the reps with the best players. He's getting maybe the first set of reps in game days against the opposition's number one players. I would be treating him as the starter from here on.
I agree.
Because he is the future quarterback of the New England Patriots franchise, hopefully.
Agreed.
Now, and I would be treating Brissett as the number 2. However, with the expectation that he can start week 1 as required.
Yeah.
I don't need to develop Brissett as the number 1 receiver with May as the backup because, well, we've got longer term plans for May, so we don't need to go full guns with him yet. We need Brissett to hit the ground running, because in all honesty, I don't care if Jacoby Brissett wins or loses games of football. It's, to me, this season is completely about the development of Drake May. Treat him as the number 1 quarterback from here on. If he's ready to start week 1 against the Bengals, then go for it.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you to put him in. And that's kind of irregardless of how the O-line looks, of, you know, whether you've shaken out who you really think your starting 3 receivers are, or, you know, say Stevenson gets injured and you're worried about, or maybe he's not got the same running back options that we anticipated. That's almost irregardless of the rest of the team. If he's ready week 1, he plays week 1. Because his development, and not because he has to then go, I expect him to win that game against Joe Burrow. No, he needs to be developing as soon as possible in that system. The other benefit, or the other difference, I guess, with the Mac Jones situation is that Mac Jones went into an Alabama team that was hitting the ground running with the best talent in the land. And I'm not an Alabama fan. I'm not trying to gloss them up, but that's a highly talented Alabama team that he walked into, and he was expected to be winning from day one because he had the best O-line in front of him. He had great options at receiver around him, and he played very well. And then he came into the Patriots, who at that point were good. They weren't great. They weren't the Brady Super Bowl teams, but they were very good. And he didn't get much of a role. They gave him baby steps when they brought him in, but it was a different situation to how I see Drake May's development, because Drake May at North Carolina did not have the best O-line. He did not have the best receivers. He was in a tougher situation, and it showed with his results. It showed with maybe the pressure down the stretch. He didn't play as well his last couple of games for them, to be fair, at the end of last season, but he doesn't expect to be given the best situation and expected to perform. He didn't have national championship expectations last season. He just went into a tough situation, played the best football he could play. And so I'd like to think that that element has helped to prepare him for this upcoming season, because this upcoming season is going to be tough. Reality is they're going to be a losing football club. It's going to be tough, but I expect him to be able to deal with that better. He's also physically a tougher guy. I expect him to hold up better than Matt Jones did. So if he is getting sacked or whatever, not that I want him getting sacked, taking big hits, you don't want that of your quarterback, but I would hopefully have less fear than when somebody looked like Bambi on ice back there. Go on.
I do have a point. You're completely right about the whole Matt Jones Alabama thing like that. And yeah, the thing is, with what we experienced, those specifics don't come into it. This is more of a guttural reaction to what we had to go through. Missing out those sorts of facts, it's just like you feel scarred by that whole experience, regardless of that details, those sorts of details. We know Drake May isn't Mac Jones. It's just you've still got that element of, we really got burnt, so we're a little bit cautious sort of thing. That's really only my point. I completely agree with everything that you said. It was just more to specify, yeah, I get it. Drake May isn't Matt Jones. It's just we went through all that. So we're that little bit edgy to have to go through, do that again. And I think for me, it's really just the O-line. Sorry. It's really just the O-line. I just feel so scarred, it seems a bit excessive, by how bad the O-line, how poor, how unput together it has been for a couple of years. I just want that a little bit more secure before we throw this, possibly our future in. And that's why I'm just a couple of games. I just want them to be a little bit sorted out, and then I want to see Drake May. That's really how it feels for me. But yeah, I completely see all of your points completely, and I don't disagree with you whatsoever.
There's a couple of things there. One is, what if the airline isn't sorted after
No, I know.
6 games?
Yeah, that's
what
fair.
if we're still going, we need that left tackle? Why didn't we sign left tackle in the offseason? And so he's now, and we're going, okay, well,
we might
Johnson's
be
come
saying
in, but he's okay at right tackle, but he's finding it tougher at the professional level than at college. And we're saying, how much do we pay on Wenu? He's not been the guard that we thought. Like, Maffey's come in, because Strange is injured or whatever, and we're going, well, hang on, this is not looking great.
You always have to promote doom and gloom.
No, but that's kind of,
you
that
have
is a possibility.
Yes,
if you're going with
course.
the attitude of, we're not going to bring him until we have the right O-line, you don't know when that right O-line's going to be. It could be game one and they look brilliant.
Yes,
but you
it
could
wasn't the right.
You could go the
O-line.
whole season and they look rubbish, and are you just going to keep your quarterback on the sideline because you're afraid of bringing him in?
No, I'm just nervous about them, and I just want them to they just need, really, it's just like I just want them to have a little bit of time to work it out. Personally, that was just it. But I'm not like, I agree. If after a couple of games they haven't sorted it out and May's looking the best and Brissett's looking terrible, then yes, put May in, even though he's going to be at risk. Because like you said, he's way more mobile than Matt Jones, and he's tougher and bigger than Matt Jones type thing. So yes, completely. It's just I have that slight reservation of, give him a couple of games just so that they've got new coaches and they've got new everything. It just feels like, let's just make sure that's like okay before we put him in. Give us a little bit of prep time. That's just my feeling on the matter. But I can see why you want to put him in.
The other thing is, a higher caliber quarterback can make an O-line seem better.
Yes.
That Matt Jones looked like a scared rabbit last season, and it made the O-line look worse, because as soon as he was under any pressure, he was bricking it and taking the sacks and everything else. Whereas a different quarterback maybe would have escaped the pocket, which is probably what we're expecting May to do at times. May use his legs. He may make plays on the move. It can not necessarily make the O-line look better, I suppose, but they can mitigate those issues better. And that's not to throw any shade at Brissett,
Agreed.
that if the O-line's looking bad, that's all Brissett's fault. But it could just go in different ways. The other element I wanted to pick up on was you saying we are scarred by what we went through, or with Matt Jones and what we have seen before. As you touched on that, this is a new coaching staff. Fans,
Yeah.
yes, fans. We're watching this.
I meant fans.
We've watched all of this, but
I'm a fan. I meant fans.
It's to talk this through. But the coaching staff, they could have a completely different philosophy. They weren't necessarily all scarred by everything that's gone through, and Cleveland, everywhere else, they may have. No, it's fine. Our plan is we're going to go ahead with him.
I didn't mean coaching, but in any shape or form. No, but you're arguing points I didn't make. I simply meant fan base. And by saying we, I'm sure there's more than just me, but I'm not saying the whole fan base. Okay, I'll just say me then, if you're just going to pick apart every single word that I say.
No, I'm not arguing
in
with you.
No way, shape, or form meant the coaches.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just elaborating on the point. Sure. It's fine. And that actually kind of brings me to something else that I thought it was, and I don't even know whether this is just a statement or this is a discussion point, but I guess this almost links back to how we think the off-season has gone, what you were saying about cap space, what you're saying about receivers. We've been conditioned as Patriots fans for the last 20 years that we don't necessarily need to go out and splash and get the highest talent, because we can develop what we have, we can coach it better. Mm-hmm. So we as a team can achieve more than a team who has a standout star or one individual player or a diva or whatever else, because we can coach it better. And ultimately, for 99% of that time period, the coach was right. Mm-hmm. We could bring in Johnny Foxborough. We could next man up. We could do your job. We could pay a lot of, overpay a lot of, let's say, mid-range guys, special teamers, because we can coach them the right way, get the best out of them, and we can get them to sort of perform above their level almost to put together a championship winning team. And that was proved, because whatever you think of Bill Belichick as a drafter or as a man manager or as a spokesperson in front of a microphone, all the different criticisms that he had, the coaching element is, I would say, he's probably the best coach the NFL has seen, or certainly one of, from what he was able to achieve. X's and O's, the brain he had. His coaching, I don't think anyone really faults. You could see it as well from players that worked underneath him. You watch those documentaries and the roast and everything, they all highly respected. They knew they were getting their balls busted. They were worked hard, but they knew why they were doing it, and they respected the end result that it achieved from his coaching methods. And you could see it from players that were veterans around the league at other teams. And like James Harrison, when he came from the Steelers, who had an entire career at the Steelers, you'd think he would absolutely hate the Patriots. But when he came, and he was only there for a few games at the end of the season when, excuse me, when they lost the Super Bowl to the Eagles. But he said afterwards how his mind was blown from his such a short time with the Patriots, at the attention to detail, at the way they operated was a different level to the Steelers. And as much as I dislike the Steelers, I hold them in very high regard for their football acumen. And so for players like that who come in and see those methods, it was elite. And it'll be very interesting to see now how that translates.
Yeah.
It is new offensive coordinators, new style offensive coordinators. This isn't a Bill Guy, of Bill O'Brien, of Josh McDaniels, all the P's, the sort of lineage of the way the Patriots are played. This is a step in a new direction now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting. Can this coaching staff, and there's more coaches this year, there's new coaches this year, can they achieve that same level of getting the best out of players that we as Patriots fans have been accustomed to? And I'm intrigued. Very intrigued. I've said that a lot today, but I feel like that's where we are in the doldrums of the off season. I have a lot of intriguing to do.
No, yeah, completely. And I think it's good to end on that, because that's exactly where we are sitting right now, is we really don't know a lot about what we've been discussing about what wide receivers they're going to maintain. We are still out on, in July. So it is an intriguing time, and it is very different for a Patriots fan as we're sitting here and realizing, actually, yeah, there is going to be potentially a lot that is really, really different. But what isn't different, folks, is that we will be back soon. We're not going to be back every week at the moment, obviously, because it's still off season, as they like to say, but we will return shortly. We won't take another month off, I don't think. Check schedules, that kind of thing, but we will be back soon. So keep your eyes on the socials as normal, and if you are subscribing to the Pat's Propaganda YouTube channel, you will not miss an episode of your favourite Chudders and myself, Clazzy Clare. So that is it for episode 30. Tune in next time, folks, and as always, go Pats!
LFG.